recently purchased this Cimarron Frontier. It is a Colt single-action army clone that is made by Pieta. Pieta is the manufacturer, Cimarron is the importer. So this video is mostly going to go over the cons of this firearm, and maybe I'll make another one talking about the good aspects of it. But first of all, I just want to let you know I've had two of these come by me. So I bought one. It had issues, which I'll talk about. I exchanged it for this one you see here, and it still had some of those same issues. So I've had two in my hands. I've been able to look at two. I've only fired this one. So yeah, I mean, a little bit, still pretty small of a sample size, but some of the issues that I had that repeated, I would kind of be worried about. So the three areas where I found there to be issues with this revolver are in the function, the machining, and I think the metal quality. Let's talk about the machining first. A lot of the edges on this are really, really sharp. They have very little deburring done. You could probably cut yourself on the inside of this hammer edge. If you're talking about the interior of it, when I have taken this apart, I've tried to clean it out with a Q-tip, and the cotton on that Q-tip just got so caught on all of the sharp edges and burrs and just leftover crap from the machining process that did not get smoothed out at all. It was definitely the roughest interior finish I've ever seen, and I take a lot of my stuff apart. The cylinder throats and the forcing cone. So I've actually made this video already, and I accidentally deleted it from my phone. So since that time, I have actually already repaired this myself, so I can't really show you the issue. But there was an issue with this forcing cone where it was just so unfinished from the factory that when I would put this inside the barrel, if I pulled up, you can still kind of tell there's like a little bit of a lip that it's catching on. It used to be a very big lip that was catching that pick, and it would only be on this side. It wasn't on this side. So I basically took a, just piece of sandpaper and just kept doing this until it was mostly smoothed out. But yeah, very ugly machining there. The cylinder throats. First off, they are a little small. A bullet does not drop through without really, really pressing it down. And also, I'm going to roll in a picture of how the edges, the bevel of these cylinder throats look. They are really jagged and ugly looking up close. Now the hammer pinholes. The pinholes holding things in the hammer, like this firing pin. You see how it's drilled there, but there's no hole on this side. I know there's some like discoloring, but that's not an opening to a hole. I would almost guarantee that a Colt would be drilled all the way through, so you can pound out that pin if you need to replace your firing pin. There's also the thing that holds the hammer roller. That pin is also only one side is drilled through, so you would have a very hard time getting it out if you needed to. Alright, now about the metal quality and what I view as soft metal throughout the gun. First, on the screws, I marred the heads of two screws while trying to get this apart and back together. And I do have a, kit with screwdriver bits that are hollow ground and, all different sizes. I was using the closest size to perfect as I could get for these. And the screw just seemed really soft and kind of stripped it out and marred it a little bit. I've never done that on a gun before, and this one it seemed just very easy to do that on. And also this frame seam is kind of just a little bit more proof. Not sure if you can see the marring right there. It's a lot more noticeable in person, but this whole seam to the top half and the bottom half of this frame, the seam was kind of just all flared out and weird, and I had to kind of pound it back in place. And I used a brass punch to do that. And the brass punch did work to move the metal, but I just thought it was working a little too easily, a little too well. Normally, brass punch would not move steel that easily. So anyway, just another data point that makes me think that this is using really soft steel. Now, this one is either a soft metal issue or it's a factory or middleman handling issue, because I mentioned this is my second one. My first one of the main reasons I exchanged that was because, I bought it new, but it came looking like a used gun. I'll roll in pictures, but there's dings all up and down the barrel, just weird markings, scratches all throughout the gun. And the only thing I can think is either everyone that's handling that gun between the factory and the end user is being very careless in how they handle it, or they're being as careful as you and me would be, but the metal is just so soft that, you know, any little thing can mark it up. I don't know what to chalk that up to, but I just know that I'm being as careful as I can with this because I do think it is soft metal. And this, my second example, also has some of its own dings. They're not in the most visible areas like they were on my first one, so I don't see it as a huge issue. Last thing on metal softness that relates to some of the function issues that I'm going to talk about and that I had in both this one and the previous one. Another indication of soft metal is these cylinder notches, the edges of them were getting hit by the bolt, the cylinder bolt, and they were peening all over. Seemed like they were peening very quickly, and they were actually changing the dimensions of the notch to where the notch was getting too narrow for the bolt to fit in. So all that's just to say that, you know, I can't prove that this is any softer metal than any other guns. I'm just saying it seems to me that there's a lot of indications that this is a softer metal than on any of my other firearms. That's all I'm saying about that. Now, as far as the function goes, first thing I'll talk about is the trigger pull. I have since corrected this. Again, I made a video and then I accidentally deleted it. I've corrected it since, but this trigger pull used to be absolutely terrible. I'm talking 5-6 pounds, very abrupt let off. You could hardly hold the gun still when the trigger broke because it was just that much pressure built up and then such an abrupt let off, and all the over travel that single action armies have wasn't helping anything. I'm going to roll in a previously filmed video of why that was, and I also made a video on my channel already of how I corrected that. Alright, so now I just want to talk about the relationship between the hammer and the trigger slash sear. What I found was there's this ledge right here, but then there's a little indented area, and it goes up like that. And it's a big enough area where this small contact surface can fully slip into that indent. And right down here is a blown up picture of that. So instead of this riding against this and this only, this falls in there, and then the chamfer that's on the sear, when you pull the trigger, it's the chamfer that's actually going to push past here. It's going to push past that corner. It's actually going to rotate the trigger backwards, the hammer backwards slightly. And then when it finally, when this corner finally meets this one and it breaks, it's like a really strong, violent break. It's probably 5-pound trigger pull. So my last and biggest issue with this gun and the one that I had before it was the fact that if you cocked the hammer at medium to fast speed, it would very frequently overshoot the cylinder and go halfway to the next cylinder. I have a video of how I corrected this. The bottom line is basically, I do not think they're doing things right at the factory. I don't think they are making the parts on the inside of the revolver interact with each other properly. And at minimum, you can say that the timing, I think, is wrong on these revolvers. I think the cylinder bolt was hitting too close to the edge of the notch. And like I said, it was peening over the metal, making the notch narrower and making the bolt not fit in there, and it would actually jump the notch and your cylinder would over-rotate. Now, like I said, that happened on both models that I've had. I did not send this one back. I fixed it myself, but I will say to Cimarron's credit, now remember, Cimarron's the importer. Cimarron was about as helpful to me as they could be. They fixed my first one's over-rotation problem. Also, I had a kind of crooked front sight on that one. They fixed that. It looked dead center. It looked great. But I could not get over how bad the finish was on that. It looked like a used gun, and I don't want a used gun if I paid for a new one. So, again, as helpful as they could be, when they replaced my gun, I did have to, go through an FFL, pay the new FFL fee. That's not in Cimarron's control. That's not their fault. Very helpful with me on the phone and email. So I will give them credit. I do think all the issues here are issues with Pieta firearms. Now, a little bit about Uberti. I've never heard of any of this stuff coming from Uberti. I don't have one, but I looked into getting this stuff a lot before I finally decided which one I wanted. Ubertis are a little less historically accurate. They're a little bit bigger in dimensions than the Colts. They have the three click hammer instead of the traditional 4. They have a firing pin safety. Blah blah blah. the problems that I had with these, if you're not willing to fix them yourself, they are really, I would say they're potentially dangerous for sure. Dangerous to the gun, maybe dangerous to the shooter. If you're not willing to fix it yourself, after dealing with what I've dealt with, I might have just gone Uberti and just deal with some things that you might not like, because it's better than having a cylinder that, jumps chambers, and, I didn't like what I had to deal with. But I'm one of those guys who's willing to spend 20 hours just working on something just to save $50 of a new part or something. But yeah, the marking, the metal softness issue, never heard of anything like that on Ubertis. Ubertis look like they have very good bluing. I will say my last model of this did not look like it had the best bluing. This one looks a lot better in my opinion. But yeah, so anyway, those are the cons of the Pieta single action army clone, and I might do another video on the pros.